Hello and welcome to the QA Therapy podcast. Are you looking to improve your overall testing and quality practices? My name is Sergio Freire and I'm solution architect and testing advocate at Xray.
And my name is Cristiano Cunha. I'm also a solution architect and test advocate at Xray, and will be your hosts and QA therapists throughout this series. Security is an essential aspect of every application, yet it's often addressed late in the development process, bringing unique challenges to teams. While security testing tools have advanced, relying solely on them can leave critical gaps. We must still explore the unknown vulnerabilities and potential risks that automated tools may overlook. To assist us with this topic, we have a special guest with us, Richard Adams. But before welcoming him, let's see what brings you here. What are the symptoms that you may be feeling that has brought you to listen to this podcast? So ask yourself, is your team still deciding if they are going to invest in security testing? Do you rely solely on automated security tests, overlooking potential vulnerabilities that require deeper exploration? Is your team so busy with other priorities that they lack time for exploratory testing? Or even are security fixes piling up, leaving your team overwhelmed and reactive instead of proactive?
These symptoms suggest a late investment in security or no investment at all. That is causing challenges further ahead, and the time slips through, leaving no opportunity to invest in exploration. The key is finding the right balance between security validations and exploratory testing to improve both efficiency and effectiveness. Let's dive deeper into diagnosing this problem and exploring strategies for achieving that balance. And today we have here with us our friend Richard Adams that I met a few years ago at Test Bash, and I was able to actually see him once again this year. And he brings a diverse background from game design to software engineering with a strong focus on testing since 2019. Passionate about breaking systems and solving complex bugs, he combines his love for testing with a growing interest in cybersecurity, even creating a card game called the Threat Agents for threat modeling. Richard has also spoken at testing conferences, sharing his expertise and insights. When he's not testing, he's honing his skills in game development and security with a long-term goal of becoming a freelance test consultant or coach, perhaps. Welcome, Richard. Are you comfortable on our QA therapy couch?
Yes, I am. Cheers.
Welcome. And let's start our podcast by trying to clarify a bit about what security testing is from your perspective, because it can have like this broad concept. So if you had to define like it in a short sentence, how you would you define it?
That's a good question. So I think I'll start just by I'm going to be cheeky and use two sentences. So security is about sort of protecting what matters to us and what's important to us most, whether that's the customer data, keeping the services running, our intellectual property. And then security testing would be looking using a range of different techniques to identify if there's vulnerabilities that would allow an attacker or a malicious person to get access or to disrupt or break something that we hold dear and we're looking to protect.
Really good definition. And as we are going to explore this relationship between security and exploratory testing, how would you define exploratory testing in this context?
So for me, what I particularly like with exploratory testing is when you've got the idea of sort of simultaneous test design and execution. So learning as we're going and performing tests on the back of what we learn and what we discover. And with security testing, particularly sort of penetration testing, you do need to learn about the system. You're learning about what will work, what won't, and then you're basing your next round of tests on that. So there's a massive overlap there, and I think the sort of principles of exploratory testing lend so well to looking at security.
With all these security breaches making headlines more and more frequently, where, in your perspective, where should teams begin when they want to invest in security testing? Because it can seem like an overwhelming kind of topic, right?
Yes, I mean the long-term goal would be to try and build a culture of security. So we've got the idea of quality engineering, so building quality in, they're trying to build security in. But I think as a starting point, I'd really recommend teams look at threat modeling. It's something you can do at the start of the project, but you can also do it when something's quite established as well. And it's a good way to get people together, thinking about security, thinking about ideas, and building an understanding of our system and where the potential vulnerabilities might be. I found it a really fascinating experience. It was my first step into security. It's the first thing I got into, and it opens up a lot of doors. You learn quite a lot quite quickly, and it can help you focus on where you want to learn as well.
And at least it starts the conversation, right? So you start talking about it, start questioning things. So I believe it's a good way to start addressing some security issues and building it sooner than later, and with it change the mentality or put that little hint on the back of your mind that security should be taken care of. I felt it on my previous companies that security is often seen as a very technical and daunting. So do you think anyone in the team can contribute to it, or does it require specialized skills?
Yes and no. I think that there's certain things that the entire team can and should be trying to contribute. One of the things I was taught when I was learning threat modeling, and unfortunately I've not managed to get it with my teams yet, but if you can get your product owners or your business analysts or whatever equivalent role you've got in your organization along to like threat modeling sessions, they're going to have particular interests and angles that they're going to want to share. And when we do threat modeling, we always try and sell the idea of don't you don't have to know how it's done. You don't have to know if it's technically possible. If you can come up with an interesting idea, then you can look at it later with the people who then might know. And similarly with the actual sort of like hands-on security testing, some of it's actually pretty simple to get like low-hanging fruit, and anyone can do it, and possibly already does without thinking of it as security testing. So trying to log in with different accounts and then accessing pages that are meant to be restricted, if you're able to access them directly, then that's a security vulnerability. But anyone can try that. I have found that the skill of people who are proper full-on security experts is way above, but that doesn't mean just because we can't do the super advanced stuff that an expert who's on the big books gets doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. And there's lots of stuff that we can do, and they're the stuff that the attackers are going to do first anyway. So yeah, it's worthwhile. It's really worthwhile, even if you're not experienced at it. There's things we can do.
In terms of the product life cycle, whenever teams are making or thinking about making new releases, where should the security testing techniques be conducted? How do you integrate it within an agile workflow, let's say?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, are you familiar with Dan Ashby did a continuous testing loop diagram,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed, we test here, we test here, we test here at all the different points.
Oh,
The
that
same,
one from Dan Ashby that continuously
yeah. And I was so tempted to steal it and then add, we can security test here, we can security test here, we can security test here. Because there's obviously different techniques we can use as security testing. So some of it's around, tools and pipelines that can integrate threat modelings in that design phase. There's things we can do in production as well for monitoring. Uh, and in terms of like doing the sort of pen testing style activities, I'd encourage teams to do that when they're testing the story, as you would do with accessibility, or you would do it with functional tests, verifying the acceptance criteria. Similarly, we try and make performance testing part of everything that we do, and security should be the same. So it's definitely something I would encourage all teams to think about in everything that we do.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just going to take what one thing that you said previously and touching base on the technicality of it. I think you addressed it really well, and I just want to highlight that because it's really important that everyone contributes to it. And like you said, sometimes we think of security testing on just applying frameworks or tools or doing security testing in a technical level, and we forgot the part that is really important, that is before all of that, thinking about what is security for us, what is security for our company, what do we want to achieve, and start those discussions before going technical. So I'm totally aligned with you. I think it's a mentality, a cultural change, and everyone can chip in.
Yeah,
And
definitely. Actually, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, an interesting thing on that was I remember one of my threat modeling sessions, someone who wasn't very technical was able to like inject with things that were interesting ideas when we were all getting fussed about the sort of like the technicalities and the more detailed aspects. They were thinking higher level and with new ideas. It was really valuable.
Yeah, yeah, all of those contributions are really, really helpful. But sometimes when we have like security testing or static security analysis of the code or something like that, sometimes we start having a lot of security threats that are identified and that are created as bugs or as challenges that you need to solve. And sometimes the teams feel a little bit overwhelmed with it. So, how can teams tackle these issues effectively? And if you want, how does the threat agents card play a role in helping also with this threat modeling aspect of it?
So with sort of handling like the lots of different vulnerabilities that you might have, I really recommend people use sort of standard sort of risk analysis where you look at the impact and the likelihood. So if something's got a low probability of ever happening, put it low down your backlog and find it, in fact, it can be okay to not fix it. There's an acronym that I started using, which is uh, MATTER. It's just one I made up. It's mitigate, as in we're going to fix it, accept, because sometimes we accept that there's going to be bugs. We're going to ship with bugs. Some security issues are not worth fixing. The impact of it is not actually that bad. Just because something's got the word security doesn't mean it's panic stations, which is something that's often misunderstood. Uh, there can be security defects that the impact of them is so small or the likelihood is so small. They might take down something for one user for a millisecond while your service restarts. We can live with that. Uh, if there's something that's more risky, then we also want to address it. And then there's T is for transfer. One of the key things is trying to use good frameworks and good systems as well to sort of like take care of security for you. So if you do find you've got a lot of vulnerabilities in your software, what can you put in place as a barrier? And then the final one is avoid, which is if you've got big problems with your product that you're working on and a particular feature, can you take it down? Can you feature flag it? You remove the access to it and give you the time and the space to then go about it without worrying about it being live and in production, because that's probably the most stressful time. So you mentioned the threat agents game. Threat modeling, I think, is like a really great way to look at security early on and also throughout the life cycle. But I found it really daunting to do my first threat modeling session. I had no idea what I was doing. And we ended up playing about with a few different games and activities, and none of them quite lent very well to the solution that we were working on. They were very focused on web applications, but we were dealing with uh, integrated systems talking to physical devices. And so I came up with my own that was a little bit more open. And it's that idea of creating something that's kind of fun as a session and a bit more interactive for people to sort of collaborate together and get people involved and engaged. So yeah, it's just like a fun way to help structure a session, because going into a meeting and saying to people, these are the processes that we're following, the steps we're following, can be a little boring and dry. But if you call them rules of a game, it's fine. Everyone's happy with that. So yeah, it's just how do we make it a bit more fun and a bit more engaging, and to get that first session done so you can learn the principles of threat modeling without needing to spend ages researching it and trying complicated approaches, or having that barrier to people who are maybe not feeling as technical and confident in that space.
I've seen this in several projects, especially on the open source projects that rely, where I see many projects, many of these projects, at least ones that I've looked at, that rely on static security checks. So, what are like the key areas that they they may be missing? What are they overlooking?
There's a range of obviously different types of static tests, and some of them will catch some things and some will catch others. But I think it kind of overlaps a bit with the whole concept of, needing to manually test things and explore test, because it's the creativity when we think about something beyond out the norm, and the way that systems might be interacting together is usually the key point. So a static test can look at an individual unit, a bit of code, and possibly find some issues there. But how the whole system's integrating and playing together, thinking about the flaws in your logic, particularly, yeah. So yeah, it's the flaws in the logic that the code won't pick up on, the static analysis tools won't pick up on, and that's where you want to be looking to manually test.
I think it has a good comparison for me, or in my head, is we don't just do unit tests for the rest of the application. So static security tests are not enough. They are good. They are a good starting point, but we need to build up on it. And those interactions will be the things that are really important to validate. Touching again, because security always was something in my teams that we tackled too late in the game, and then we just get overwhelmed with the amount of things that were found regarding security, and then we're just struggling in trying to define what is priority, what is not. Like you said, you need to define what to solve, because we don't have a team to solve everything, and sometimes we have a little bit difficulty in addressing critical vulnerabilities effectively, because we are so overwhelmed with the amount of vulnerabilities we have there. So do you have any suggestion how teams can address those critical vulnerabilities while not letting the big amount of other issues just being there, and then you have a big technical debt that you need to surpass?
Part of it is we need to accept that we're not going to fix everything, and again, I would encourage people, if you've got a mountain of security issues, look at what you can do to temporarily hide them to help you manage it. So whether that's taking a service down or taking it offline because it's a risk, especially if it's something that's live, then you've got real problems because you might get impacted. The key is you need to try and test early and address security as a day-to-day thing, something that we're sort of building into our way of working. So we're not hitting everything right at the end. We want to be finding these as we're developing.
In your experience, what are like your top tools for assisting you on doing security testing, and eventually also the tools that can also that you also like for supporting your exploratory testing?
Yeah, so I really like, there's a tool called SSP Zap. It used to be OWASP Zap or Z proxy. It's really, really cool. It's it's really difficult to like figure it out and get the best out of it.
I
I've
remember I tried it a
It's
long
yeah,
time ago.
it's not the most intuitive piece of software. There's an equivalent out there called Burp Suite that I think is meant to be a bit easier, but my work uses Zap and my previous work used Zap, so I use Zap. But it's really neat to sort of share with people what it is. It's a tool that you can go in and usually do your normal testing if you're using a web application. And in the background, it's going to be looking at all the requests going on and seeing if there's anything in there that looks suspicious or dodgy. If there's anything coming back in the responses that suggests that there's issues with the setup of your cookies or things like that, it'll tell you about them. And then, so yeah, you can just do your normal testing. You get like a big report on, here's all the potential things I've found. Some will be false flags, but and then you can also then enable an attack mode, so it'll go do more aggressive attacks. I would recommend make sure that you're doing that on a safe environment. I was preparing a demo for something and I was going to record a video, and I used it against my own environment, my own website, and I got IP banned from my own website. So uh, yeah, be safe with it. The other tool I'd like strongly recommend to people is cheat sheets. It's a really, really useful thing to be using, and I keep them with me every time I'm doing my security testing because I can't remember all the SQL injection commands and everything like that. I don't need to remember that they're written down for me. I can just copy paste them in and see what bites. Finally, Google developer tools in Chrome, they're really powerful. You can do quite a lot with them, even if just to sort of scratch the surface and like some of the easy testing. They're quite a nice way to play about and get going, and yeah, they're quite neat. I like sort of changing forms and see even if I can access stuff that I shouldn't be able to do, change values that I shouldn't be able to change. And then you mentioned exploratory tools as well. So to the listeners, this isn't a planned plug, but Xray Exploratory app. Uh,
That's
the,
good. That's good.
actually, the first time I ever used the tool was I was doing a capture the flag tournament with my work, and I decided for the first time I'd give uh, Xray Exploratory app a go, and it was great. I was like recording notes and like the stuff I was finding as I was going, and taking notes of like secrets that I had and potential SQL queries that worked and results it got back, and then taking videos and screenshots, and I treated it just as an exploratory testing session, and the tool was really powerful for that. So yeah,
Good
Nice.
to hear.
Yeah, good to hear. That's why
also,
the tools are there. They need
yeah,
to be
I, I,
helpful.
I did actually win for the EU as well with that. So I don't think I would have done it without the exploratory approach.
Do you have any resources for anyone that want to learn more about security or exploratory testing that you recommend?
Yeah, there's Portswigger who create Burp Suite. Uh, they've got an online web academy that, at least last time I looked at it, it was free. And it's really, really useful. There's absolutely loads of great information in there. They break down all the different attacks. For threat modeling, I'd recommend there's a book by Adam Shostak called Threat Modeling Designing for Security. It's a really, really good book. It's quite easy to read as well for such a complicated topic. I found it very accessible and very, very easy to get going with. So that was really good. And of course, I can't leave without saying the Threat Agents card game is a great way to get learning threat modeling.
Anything else that you like to end before to add before we close our episode, Richard?
I just like to say to people who listening, like I'd encourage you to have a go with security testing. It's really is good fun, and you'll probably find some interesting bugs along the way. So what's not to love?
All these things that sometimes can seem like daunting and so challenging at first time. It's whenever we start putting our hands on it, reading, learning, they can actually be fun, and we learn along the way. So we gain all this expertise that can help us in our daily jobs. So I think definitely we should try these things out because we also became aware about these risks that are so important, right? So once again, thanks for being here with us, Richard, and helping us understand more on how we can take advantage of security testing, why it matters, and why we should advance the approach to security testing and really investing on it.
Thanks very much. It's been great chatting to you, and good seeing you again. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.